So, we've spent tonight at the Sukri Sarakoğlu Stadium in Istanbul. Fenerbahçe 0, Lyon 0. So, we're going to do a little temperature check on how José Mourinho's doing. You tell me what you think happened tonight, and I'll tell you what he said in the press conference. How does that sound like a deal?
It's pretty lukewarm, Andy. As a veteran of many Mourinho eras, it felt like something I'd seen before.
Yeah.
I saw a team that was reasonably well organised defensively, reasonably well structured, to be fair to them, but that lacked ideas in possession, that had very little adventure. There were many players who, upon receiving the ball, will stop the ball, then look around. What am I supposed to do now? There were no patterns there, and they were struggling to create openings, moving things too slowly. Felt pretty turgid. United fans, Tottenham fans, stop me if you've heard this before. It looked like the team who didn't really know what to do with the ball, and it was pretty underwhelming stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I guess to put the Mourinho perspective over, he pointed to the amount of injuries and unavailabilities they've got. That's not going to be much better for the game against Midtjylland next week when they need a result to try and qualify and carry on in the Europa League. I mean, he also said to me that, well, we'll have a completely different team when we get to the knockouts. So we'll have Skriniar, we'll have Diego Carlos, both defensive players.
Let me stop you there, because I was talking to our dear friend Rory in the stands during the game. I do not feel like I'm watching a team that could really do with two new expensive centre-halves. That doesn't seem like a rational allocation of resources here. I feel like I'm looking at a team that could use a midfielder with some legs, that could use players who... I was about to say players who can pass the ball, but you've got Dusan Tadic in there, you've got players who've got some moves. They were just not... There's an inhibition that comes over José Mourinho teams sometimes, and the players almost look like they're afraid to try the difficult things.
Against better opposition?
Not so much a problem when Alex Saint-Maximin came on. I mean, he's not afraid of trying anything, but there was the team, they played in a slightly introvert manner, I felt, and it was quite turgid. And the thing I want to put back to you, Andy Brassell, as someone who watches more of the Turkish league than I do, I haven't watched Fenerbahçe a lot before tonight, but they're doing pretty well in the league. They're winning a lot of games. They're scoring goals. It must be a different story domestically.
Well, I think it's the quality of the opposition as well. You know, they don't play teams like Lyon. And this is a Lyon, of course, that are not confident at the moment, that haven't been playing well for really a month. The coach is under pressure. And I think you could see that, because the thing that really struck me is that Fenerbahçe physically were pretty much cooked after an hour, really. And if Lyon had a little bit more confidence to really take the game to them, rather than have a feeling of, oh, we maybe could win this game, then I think they would have won the game, because Fenerbahçe couldn't physically resist them. And that goes back to your point about the legs in midfield, really, with Fred, who globally has done pretty well here, and Amrabat. You're not looking at incredible athleticism, and when you transfer that to the European stage, that does make a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I name-checked Dusan Tadic, not a youngster. You know, there's a lack of verve, and it was such a contrast between... I mean, we went to Galatasaray on Tuesday, we went to Besiktas yesterday. Both of those games had so much more energy to them, so much more zip, so much more fight, I thought. Whereas this was just kind of... Again, something fans of Man United, of Tottenham, of Roma, I think will recognise from like the bad version of José Mourinho teams. So it raises the question, 7 months into the Mourinho Fenerbahçe experience, where are we? Are the fans we were talking to in the stadium were not openly hostile to him, but they don't seem to be fully buying what he's selling either. There was a willingness to give him time, but is this working? Is he providing value for the massive wages they're paying him?
No, well, I guess the question is what you really want from him, isn't it? I mean, if it's all about sporting success, you never really hire him in the first place, because Ismail Kartal, his predecessor, got 99 points last season. Okay, they didn't win the league, but how are you doing better than 99 points? You're not doing better than 99 points. That's an exceptional season, and a season that I don't think either Fenerbahçe or Galatasaray statistically can repeat, even though Galatasaray are unbeaten in the Super League up to this point. So why do they bring in Mourinho? Well, because they're a club that hasn't won the league for over a decade. they feel they're hard done by. But who's hearing your complaints about referees and the authorities outside Turkey if Mourinho's not here? No one. Whereas every time he says something about we're talking about it now. He spoke about the VAR. He said, I don't want to speak about the referee, but I do want to speak about the VAR, in quite a Father Ted sort of way. And you think, well, that's something that when we get to tomorrow, it'll be all over the internet. It'll be Mourinho popped off after Fenerbahçe's 0-0 draw with Lyon. But if Ismail Kartal pops off about it, no one really, apart from people who follow Turkish football, are listening to that. So don't you think it's projection in the same way as, say, Cristiano Ronaldo going to Juventus? You think he's the key piece to put them over the top. He proves not to be, but it's not really about that anyway. It's about giving your brand voice. Now, in a very different way in Juventus, but I think that's what Fenerbahçe are doing.
I understand that logic. What I would maybe question is, does Mourinho have that impact anymore? When people
people still think he's great copy, don't they?
Yeah, but when
people think he's a great manager, I think is a question, but they think he's great copy.
But what is the reaction what it was 10 years ago? Is the reaction what it was 15 years ago? When people say, oh my God, Jose said this, is this true, is this not true? Maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like, at least in my circle of acquaintances, people just kind of roll their heads and say, oh yeah, Jose's playing the hits again. Yeah. Like, this is not, it's becoming hard to take him seriously. Yeah. And especially when that's not backed up by noteworthy sporting results, which he hasn't had in his last two jobs. Yeah. At some point, you just kind of become a sort of footballing P.T. Barnum, a sort of a figurehead of something ludicrous. And why would you pay a lot of money for that when you already had a coach who got you to 99 points?
I think that's the question, really, isn't it? Because at Roma, even if the football wasn't always great and the results weren't great towards the end, he did get them to the final of the Conference League and they won it. He got them to the final of the Europa League the following year, and they were a penalty shootout away from winning it. And he created something at Roma, certainly in terms of filling the stadium, which is really difficult to do with the Olimpico. There are much better Roma teams who didn't fill the stadium. So that's, I think, testament to his continued charisma and his magnetism and all that sort of stuff. But do you feel any of that sense of oneness, that sense of optimism here? I mean, of course, we're doing another video on what it's like watching football in Istanbul. It was a great atmosphere, I thought, at points today, even though the match wasn't fantastic. But do you feel that Mourinho's really revving up the public in the same way that he did in Roma? Because I don't.
I didn't feel that. And listen, this is a great stadium. It's a wonderfully designed stadium. It's right in the middle of the neighbourhood. The pre-match scenes were amazing.
You feel like you're toppling onto the pitch.
Yeah, and the atmosphere was very good when it got going. But and maybe it's an unfair comparison, but we went to Galatasaray, we went to Besiktas, and both of those were exhilarating experiences. Yeah. As a neutral, as a complete beginner to this world, I came away from both of those games thinking I can't wait to do it again. I came away from this thinking this is a great setting, this is a historic club, wonderful fans, all of this. Yes. I'm not sure I'd pay to watch this team every week. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd want to repeat that, because what's being served up on the field is just kind of anemic and not very fun, which seems bad to me, especially if you're not going to win anything.
I mean, I guess once Mourinho's come here to do what he wants to do, so stand up for the club and what they want him to do, I mean, a 3-year contract on this sort of money is quite a lot. Do you think it will reach a point where both of them will feel, we've made a point now, should we go our separate ways? Does anyone really want to take this to the end of the contract? Because if I was Fenerbahçe, I'm not sure I'd want to be paying him that money for the entire extent of the contract. So if another Premier League club came along and he said quite openly that he would love to have another crack at the Premier League, and whether that's an Everton down the road or wherever else the opportunity comes, and you have to think it would be a bottom half team now, or whether it's Saudi Arabia or whatever, do you think that would not just suit Mourinho but maybe suit Fenerbahçe a little bit?
Yeah, no, I'm being very negative about Mourinho here now, and I'm glad you mentioned the Saudi thing, because I think he does deserve kudos for taking this on.
He wants to be important in European football still,
but also like he absolutely could have gone to a less relevant league, or in the case of Saudi, a completely irrelevant league, and cashed in and made a lot of money off of his name. And I think no one would have even judged him for that. I think that's what we would have almost expected him to do at this point of his career. But instead he's come here to Istanbul, which is a real hotbed of football, incredibly passionate fans, clubs with a great history, knowing that he's up against the Galatasaray team that's almost unstoppable.
Yeah.
I think he deserves some credit, even for someone who really doesn't like him, in my case, for taking on that challenge. I think that's cool. I love to see that. But it's just kind of a shame that he's not making more of a fist of it and making it more interesting. Albeit they're doing better in the league. But it's just a little bit of a downer, the whole thing. And I can't get away from the fact that it seems like Fenerbahçe are paying this guy a lot of money to make the team slightly less good than it was last year, but he will very efficiently mouth off in the press a lot. That's not a business model I love in terms of turning the stadium into like a place you want to go every week and you want to pay your money and support and get excited and chant and sing and go home and have a great time. I don't think he's giving them that.
Yeah. No, I know where you're coming from. Nevertheless, we have had an incredible week in Istanbul, Lars and I. We'll be talking about it elsewhere on the OTC YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Plug in so you can see that video as well. Remember to get involved with the podcast, of course. That comes out every Thursday on your favourite podcatcher with me, Dot Adebayo, Lars, Nicky Bandini, David Cartledge, Miguel Delaney, series of other guests, all with their own unique takes on European football and the biggest stories around it. And remember, every Friday, if you subscribe to that feed as well, we have the Ask OTC podcast where we answer your questions on anything to do with European football. So ask us them on socials or in the comments here.